My name is Scott Wilcox. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's panel. The topic is Careers in Entertainment Law, the specialty of advising artists, creators, and entertainment businesses. I'm an entertainment and media lawyer, and it's my pleasure to welcome not only our participants, but today's distinguished panelists. We have with us Marjorie Garcia, who's a partner at King Holmes, Paterno, and Soriano, Erica Monroe Kennerly, who's the Senior Vice President of Business and Legal Affairs and Associate General Counsel for Endeavor Content. And last but not least, Raymond Wu, who's Vice President of Business Affairs and Legal Counsel for Lucasfilm. So we're very excited to have all of them share with you their perspectives on today's subject and to introduce a fascinating subject, legal careers in the entertainment and media space. And we'll start with them giving a little more detail about what it is they currently do and in their backgrounds in the space. So Marjorie, I'll turn it to you to start.
Thank you, Scott. And thank you for having me here. Really an honor to share my knowledge and hopefully wisdom with everyone that's watching now. Like you mentioned, Scott, I'm a partner at King Holmes, Paterno, and Soriano. I specialize in music law, which means that most of my clients, about 99%, are only coming to me for advice on music, their music business. So that would be their recording agreements, publishing agreements, endorsement agreement, branding agreement, merchandise, et cetera, et cetera. I've done that for about 16 years now. I'm very, very proud to be amongst a very small group of Latino partners and attorneys in California. The percentages are pretty abysmal, so I'm happy to be here to represent, and hopefully some people that are watching are people who look like me.
Thanks, Marjorie. Happy to have you here. Erica.
Hi, thank you so much, Scott. And like Marjorie, it's an honor for me to be here. As you stated, I am the Senior Vice President of Business and Legal Affairs at Endeavor, where my focus, my team, I lead a bi-coastal team focusing on all non-scripted content, which is basically anything that's not a scripted television show or feature film. So we handle live events, reality, documentary, talk shows, sporting events, audio, music, podcast, etc. I started my career as a litigator, a corporate litigator, moved into entertainment litigation and then entertainment transactional to find myself here today.
Thanks, Erica. And Ray.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me here. I have been practicing law for about 30 years, almost 30 years, 20 of which I've been in the studio system. And I'm currently with Lucasfilm, which is part of the Walt Disney Company. I focus on the direct-to-consumer streaming content. So I negotiate the deals for shows like Boba Fett or The Mandalorian or stuff like that. And I also negotiate the overall deals for the company. Prior to this, I worked at Warner Brothers and ABC Television, and then also Disney again. And I started as a litigator as well. I started in insurance defense litigation, so it was very different, but I enjoyed it very much.
That's great. And I'd like to dive into the substance, but since I didn't really introduce myself, just to add to my statement that I'm an entertainment lawyer, I started out on the business side of the entertainment industry as a manager in the live theater industry for several years, then was at a large law firm for my first decade of practice before moving in-house to represent a Broadway producer's office on Chicago and Waitress and other projects, and now have my own entertainment and media practice in New York. So let's go ahead and get started. We've mentioned the subject of entertainment and media law, but Marjorie, could I ask you to tell us from your perspective, what is entertainment and media law? What are issues that the students should think about when they're talking about that subject?
Well, I think it's pretty broad, as you can see from this panel. There's a lot of different things that you can do in media. Like I mentioned, I specifically work in music, meaning that someone here at my firm who does do TV and film agreements would handle a TV and film agreement for one of my clients if that were the case that my client needed that help. There's corporate law, so corporate issues that come up when our clients are opening up companies. There's also trademark law. There's just a lot of variety that you can do. And I think it's important for people that are watching this that they focus on something that they really enjoy. For me, I was a recording artist when I was a kid, and I signed my first agreement when I was 16 years old, when I was a minor. And that experience really molded me and really taught me a lot of very hard lessons about what losing your rights felt like from the artist's perspective. And so it became for me a lifelong goal to not allow for other people to experience the same thing, especially, marginalized communities, non-English speaking communities, which I now represent. And so I think if you're interested in entertainment, you should focus on something you really enjoy. Are you a movie buff? Are you somebody who really likes, content creation? Are you somebody who wants to represent creators or companies? I mean, there's just so many avenues, and you really got to just kind of focus on what you like and do all the internships that you could possibly do, and see what sort of speaks to you and what you find yourself really drawn to.
Thanks, Marjorie. Erica, thinking about this entertainment and media law practice area, why would you say that it's important? What value do entertainment and media lawyers deliver for their clients? I know, again, a broad question, but how do you think of that?
So basically, you're asking how is media and entertainment law as valuable as corporate law, I would say, and other practices. I mean, it's extremely important. I mean, the media and entertainment business is a huge business. It's an international business. Music, television, film, all content is international, no matter what language, what geographical space you're in. And so, media law and entertainment law is an important tool to the operations of any media company or any talent or any distributor. And so our role is to make the deals that get the shows on the air, the music on the air, the television, the movies on the screen. So it's a very, very integral role. It involves all aspects of the law: finance, immigration, employment, real estate, what have you. So it's a very, very, very broad field. And again, as Marjorie stated, you can choose to work in whatever sector of the field that you would like. I mean, entertainment encompasses also sports and fashion and gaming, you name it. So it is a very broad and very lucrative industry that needs legal and business affairs support.
Well said, Erica. I often say to people that the entertainment and media practice area is really specializing in the representation of a particular client industry, so that it, as you said, it runs the full gamut. Entertainment lawyers are generalists in some respect, really understanding the needs of entertainment clients. And sometimes we need to rely on specialists for particular areas that we may not be as expert in. But I like the variety that brings, that you never know what the day is going to hold for you. And you really get to work in a lot of different practice areas and be comfortable with them, and can cross different entertainment and media disciplines or the sports and fashion lines as well. There are a lot of different clients that you can represent. Ray, I know that your move to Lucasfilm wasn't that long ago, though time has been flying, but throughout the course of the pandemic, you've had the opportunity to serve clients in in your private practice and now in-house, what would you say have been some of the largest challenges of representing clients during the pandemic, and the ways that you've seen entertainment lawyers adding value to clients, dealing with both the uncertainty around the pandemic and some of the changing business models that people see as new streaming services come online, and traditional movie theaters have been closed and the like?
I think that the most direct effect is just the dealing with COVID during production, the incremental costs, the time it's taking to deal with things. Unfortunately, sometimes shutdowns if something happens. I mean, even as like getting our guest cast in, like if something happens in the film they're in now, it shuts down. It affects our schedule too, getting them to us on time. I think the other side of that coin is that it's been super exciting. I moved to Lucasfilm, like you said, 6 months ago, specifically to work in streaming. And I was a partner at a law firm before that. And I actually joined, I joined that firm specifically because I wanted to learn more about streaming. Because this was before the pandemic, but I just found it like, oh, that's really fascinating. And I was going to try to relate it to the business I was in then, which was live entertainment. And I was lucky to pivot, to be frank, because at the time, that now everybody just wants content. So really, that's why I have a job, is because Lucasfilm was a client and they really needed someone to come in and help negotiate the deals for all the content that we're creating, because we just have to keep on feeding the streaming service. So in a good way. I mean, it's exciting because new stories are being created, old stories are being, revisited in a new way. It's all turned on its head, and there's just so much business right now. It's actually a little bit mind bending and blowing at the same time. There's too much to do.
It is an exciting time to be in this practice area. So we talked a little about what entertainment and media law careers involve. Why don't we talk now about how one gets there? I think we all have different stories about our entertainment journeys, but one question that our students might have is, how competitive is this field? And I shouldn't just say students, because some of those watching are recent graduates. But in any event, how competitive is the entertainment and media law space, would you say? Marjorie, do you want to take this one?
Sure. Very competitive. I make a joke all the time with my bosses here, and I tell them that when I left law school, I applied for a job here and I never got a call back. And then years later, after I had already been in-house for 2 years and I'd litigated for 7 years and litigated for 2, then I got my shot here. And so I really had to pay my dues to get where I am now. And it really is about persistence, because I don't think that you have to be, and this is just my perspective, I don't think you have to be the A student to be a really great lawyer. I think, you got to get yourself in however you can into law school, and you got to be the person who's willing to do the work, and have also really great skills that you don't learn in law school, like common sense and, and the way that you deal, your personality, and the way that you deal with issues as they come up, and the way that you deal with anxiety. And because our jobs are very stressful on a very, like you said, Scott, or maybe it was Ray, that, new things sort of happen, things that challenge us every single day. And, those are skills that they don't teach you in law school, but you have to, you sort of teach yourself as you're going, as you kind of walk through your journey and your career. So, persistence, you got to be willing to be the first one in, the last one out. You got to have balance as much as you can, so that you're able to walk on that treadmill, sometimes at, 3 and sometimes sprint at 10, and do the work, be the person that's willing to do the work.
Erica, can I ask for your perspective on, given the competitive nature of the career in this practice area, what recommendations you might have for students who are
Sure.
considering this path?
As someone who is constantly, who manages a team and who's constantly hiring for positions, reviewing resumes, and referring people, I would say it is a very competitive space, especially in-house, because you only have X number of roles that, and most in-house jobs are not very transient. So people are usually in those seats for a while, especially the more senior you get, and you're capped. So if you have a GC or EVP or SVP, you're pretty much there. Ascending to those heights usually happens as a matter of people leaving those seats. So there's a very small number of these jobs, and in law firms too. I mean, only some certain number of firms actually practice entertainment law or have entertainment law practices. And so, in order to stand out, one of the things that, I think, Marjorie said a lot of things that made a lot of sense, but, basically, the hustle factor, right? How you push yourself ahead of other people, the experience that you have. So even if it's internships or unpaid positions that show that you actually have had exposure to the area of law that you're looking to work in is very, very helpful, because that makes you stand out against someone who's just a generalist. And usually when I'm looking at resumes, even for junior positions, those people who have no touch points in my industry whatsoever, their resumes don't get past, an initial glance, because I need someone who actually has some type of experience and exposure. And, most younger lawyers or students would say, well, how do I get that? I haven't worked, I haven't graduated. But you do the internships or the externships or join different programs. It not only does it give you touch points, but it shows your interest, and it shows that, I may be able to communicate with you in ways that, most people who aren't part of the industry or who haven't been exposed to the industry can understand. So there's different shorthand for things, industry terminology that, if I'm in a fast-paced firm or corporate environment, in-house entertainment department, I'm moving really quickly, and I don't really have a lot of time to, explain all of the nuances of the industry, nor do the lawyers who work for me. So it does help to have someone who has some exposure or knowledge. And so, yes, if you are interested in music, television, film, gaming, fashion, sports, whatever it is, use your summers and your breaks wisely, and get those internships, whether they're paid or unpaid, just so you can have that experience on your resume, because it does make a lot of difference, no matter how deep, or not the experience was.
Thanks, Erica. You used the abbreviation GC. So just to clarify for the group, if they might not know, that would be for a general counsel, which often a chief legal officer or general counsel would be the top executive overseeing the legal department for a company in whatever industry, but we use that term in the entertainment space as well. Ray, could I ask you, from your vantage point, having been at both law firms and in-house, as was the case for Erica and me, what are some of the differences between the experience of working at a law firm in the entertainment and media space and working from an in-house role?
That's a really good question, Scott. Let's see. Like working in-house, I spent more time in-house as in business affairs and a lawyer than I have working in firms as an entertainment lawyer, because I was a litigator for a little while too. But the difference that I noticed is well, frankly, it's billing your time. In a law firm, I can't tell you how much it was like how hard it was at the end of a 14-hour day to go, oh, wow, I billed 5 hours. And it's really disappointing because I'm sure I see you nodding your head.
The worst, the hardest and the worst part.
Right? You could have done something that was so important and really helped the client. It was worth multiple hours, but you did it in a 20-minute phone call. But that's what you could bill for it. This is not a money thing. This is how you feel at the end of the day thing. It's like, wow, I just feel like I need to do even more hours. And it's kind of not for me, it wasn't as fulfilling. Where I find in-house, there's a lot of work that you do, and it might take 10 or 15 minutes, but it's something that really helped out your client or kept the production going, or you settled something and it just felt really great. And you feel like you accomplished something. So that is not to say at a firm, you definitely accomplished. We rely on firms so much, and they're so valuable, and they really do, honestly, the work that is the tough work that really needs to get trudged out and get things signed before people get on airplanes and stuff like that. But that's the biggest difference. I know that was more of a practical thing as opposed to the thing, but that's the biggest difference for me.
How about the client relationship, Ray? How is the relationship with a client different when you're sitting in-house with them, perhaps in the same business unit, or perhaps as part of the same corporate team, regardless, as opposed to perhaps working on a single project or project-specific basis at a firm?
Being in-house, you do have that closer relationship. They do rely on you for many things. So I think it's good because you know the ins and outs of the business and what they need or what will really help them. Interestingly, at a firm, though, I found that actually some of the calls you would get were very interesting too, because they would save using a firm for issues that were really big, right? Because it's like, okay, we need to call our outside counsel, we need to talk to them, and it was these large scale issues needed to be solved. In-house, they're going to call you for everything. So literally one day you're dealing with this, whatever deal that you're trying to get a showrunner, to make sure this is a season, 3 of your show. And at the same time, you got a call going, oh, you know what? This actor really needs to be released. And you're like, oh gosh, they're both important. But at the same time, you're getting pulled into different directions on everything, because in-house are going to call you for every little thing, which might not be a bad thing. That means they rely on you and they trust you. But it's probably at the end of the day, you're kind of like, wow, I didn't get to 8 of the 10 things I wanted to.
Absolutely. I think we've touched a bit on the variety of different clients and the diversity amongst client types. But with our theme for the conference this year being one diverse industry, I wanted to just move for a moment to what changes you have all seen in the industry, either over the course of your career or recently, or something you'd like to share about where you see the industry going in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion issues. It's great that from my perspective, there's a greater awareness of these issues, and there have been initiatives put in place to try to correct the imbalance that Marjorie alluded to earlier in our discussion in terms of representation of a lot of different backgrounds within the industry. Marjorie, is there anything else that you would like to share on that topic from what you've been seeing?
I think for the first time amidst, it's a pandemic and all the wildness of these past years, there is the awareness and there's also action. And I think people are being very purposeful about how they're hiring, how they're promoting, because that's been traditionally the issue in music, is at the labels, the people who are in positions of power and heads of departments are not people of color. And so now it's changing. And I think everyone's sort of watching to see what's happening. And also we're looking at how practices and labels have affected disproportionately Black creators, legacy artists who were under horrible agreements that are now being fixed. Sony in particular actually started an initiative where if you met certain qualifications as a legacy artist, they wiped out your unrecouped balance. And I think that was, meaning that if you had monies that were not recouped yet, that they had paid out advances, recording costs, marketing costs, those would be taken off your balance sheet so that you could actually see royalties for the first time after 30, 40 years of being under contract. And I think a lot of people are starting to look at termination rights more deeply and seeing, reverting rights to the initial copyright content creators. And I think for us at the firm in particular, I think having me as the only partner who is of color, I have really worked with the people at my firm to really focus on our hiring practices and really ask ourselves, where are we going when we are seeking new hires? Where are we tapping into? And I can tell you, it's sometimes difficult. It's difficult to find people of color that have the qualifications that we need. But we also, because we're in positions of power, we have to be the ones to open the door, and we have to be the ones who give people the first opportunity. We can't wait for them to have 3-4 opportunities before they come to us. So we've done that. We've done that, and it's been working out really great. I'm really proud of how we look, as opposed to how we looked three or 4 years ago. And I think that's people in positions of power need to really be mindful of that in their hiring and in their promotions.
Can I jump in on that really quickly before we end? I wanted to, Marjorie stated that it's sometimes hard to find qualified candidates. It's really not an issue of qualification. I just want to clear that up. It's the issue of opportunity and access, right? And so if you look at the percentage of Black attorneys in the United States, probably around 4.7%, Latinx attorneys in the United States, around 5%, Asian attorneys in the United States, about 2.5%. And this is all industries, all across all industries, right? And so if you're looking at those tiny numbers, and I know, for instance, for a Black woman like myself, out of that 4.5%, only 2% of those Black attorneys are Black women. So if you're looking at sheer numbers against the larger, landscape, the, lawyers of color, and thank you, Scott, for the representation that you have here today. It's amazing, right? But the lawyers of color, the pool is much smaller, mostly because the opportunities for us to become lawyers are a lot less, it's a lot less, right, than our counterparts who are not from minority communities. And so, if you look at, taking an equitable approach to, what the landscape looks like, you have to look at the systemic inequities that prevent us from gaining these degrees. So again, I said this in a panel yesterday. I'm tired of hearing people saying, we just can't find any, with the idea that, they're not qualified enough to be in these positions. It's not about quality, it's about quantity. They're just not enough number-wise based on systemic inequities that don't allow for the growth of professionals in these areas. And so it's really important to understand that. It's really important, like Marjorie said, the decision makers, the people making the content are not usually people of color, which is problematic in itself, because we're making content for a universal audience, but don't have that type of universal representation, as gatekeepers. So I think, post George Floyd, we're looking at a lot of companies and studios and firms making decisions to wake up and say, hey, this is important. Before the question was, what's the business case for diversity? Now the business case is diversity. And so I'm really excited to see that a lot of great changes are happening, on and off set, behind, in front of the camera, in front of the mic, behind the mic. And we need to really, harness the energy of the moment and push it forward.
Mm-hmm. And let me just say that when I said qualified, I meant if you're writing a list out of all the things that you're looking for in a hire, if you're saying, I want the person to come from Stanford and I want the person to have this many years of experience, that's what I mean. That, if we're not being purposeful about finding talent without having all these qualifications that need to be met, there's no way we're not going to,
Absolutely. Because those systemic barriers prevented that person from getting.
Exactly. I couldn't be here. I couldn't be here if those were the qualifications. But I went to incredibly poor, I grew up very poor, grew up in poor neighborhoods, went to schools with lack of books that actually, stayed together. And, and I went to law school and still had trouble with grammar and still had issues with things that I don't think other classmates were dealing with. And, and so I think my journey it felt like it was so long to get where I am. Mm-hmm. But if I don't identify people who are like me, who didn't have the same opportunities, and if I look at a qualifications list and I just say, this is it, these are my parameters, way I'm going to find somebody, because it's not that way. We're up against these mountains already that we have to, and so it's great to see, like you said, Erica, this panel who's, consists of people of color that are in positions of power who can really, really from the inside out change, the way that we look at these companies. I mean, so it's really beautiful. It's really great.
And that's why it's important to lift as we climb. Yeah.
It's great.
Scott, let me add just one. I wanted to add one quick thing to that, because I feel like it's important when we look at resumes and we look at people that can fill positions, is how can they do the job? How can we help them succeed in those jobs, as opposed to looking at, I understand what you're saying, like certain boxes that people want to check off, because not everybody has the opportunities to have those boxes right on their CV. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. That's one of the reasons why I'm really happy where I am now, is because I feel like it's all about, you're going to do well if you love your job and you really find it interesting. Where I am now, I find that we're looking all over, from the creative to the business affairs, the legal level, for people that can do the job. And I feel like I see people, especially with the talent deals I'm doing now, people are challenging themselves and looking for people that can write this content that don't traditionally come from the same pools that they used to be. And that's a lot of work, but people are doing it. And that's what I feel is important, that we just put the effort in.
That's great. So I just wanted to, since we're short on time, I'd like to close out the panel after a great discussion. To the extent you each have time to give a quick take, any thoughts we haven't already covered about things that that you'd like to recommend for students as they're thinking about a career in this area. Erica, do you have time to give your quick thoughts there?
Yes, I can do that before I drop. I would like to say that it's very, very, very important that you all learn to network, learn to, brand yourselves at a very young age. And what I mean is getting out there, and it's hard, it's the pandemic, but social media gives you an open invitation to seek out people who can give you advice and who can help you and mentor you and sponsor you. Every opportunity that I've had has been by virtue of someone helping me in some way, shape, or form, whether they were a stranger or not strangers. And so it's really important, especially in this industry, which is really relationship driven. I run my department, with that in the forefront. And that's the basic tenet of business affairs to me, is it's about relationships. So learn early how to create and nurture and maintain relationships, and use those relationships to learn what you need to learn and to get where you need to go.
That's also important. Thank you, Erica.
Thank
Ray,
you.
do you want to chime in on that front? Any other tips or suggestions?
I think it's what I had already mentioned a bit, was find what you have a passion for, and you'll do well in it. I think that's really an important thing. And honestly, believe in yourself, because there's going to be people out there that will help you, and there are other people out there that are not going to help you. But don't let that get you down, because they're not right. Just believe in yourself, ask questions as a young person, and just keep on pushing. But if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. And that's really what's important. And if you do what you feel that is helping yourself and other people, you'll feel good at the end of the day.
Thanks, Ray. Marjorie, anything you would add?
I think just doing every single internship that you can do in the field, like Ray said, in the field that you want to be in, just go, just call everyone, because you might be surprised at how many people will be responsive to you. I have multiple people that reach out, students, college students, people, people in law school, people out of law school, and are just looking for advice. And I'm happy to give somebody a half an hour of my time, or take someone to lunch, because I think we care. You'd be surprised at how responsive we can be if you show us that you are genuinely interested in our field. So do the internships, do the networking. I know it's harder now with the pandemic, but there are opportunities that might be opening up in the near future, hopefully. And do it all, and keep your network up, send thank you cards or emails when someone is responsive to you, because it is their time and it is valuable. Like Ray said, we do have billable hours. So that's negative 0.15 when we take your call. So, but keep it up, and hope to see you and call you a colleague at some point.
Thanks, Marjorie. And I'll just add from my perspective, I think, for those who are still in college and thinking about this potential space, you don't necessarily need to decide whether you're going to pursue law school and pick a legal career. My best advice is figure out if you want to be in the entertainment and media space, get some business experience there. In my case, working before law school was incredibly valuable, because I got depth of perspective and really came to understand the business before I became a lawyer. I also think that makes people a better law student, at least in some circumstances, where they're able to work before making a decision to go to law school. And the other thing is to read about the space, like find, as was discussed earlier in the panel, which discipline or area really interests you. Try to become an expert in something. It can be something very narrow, but that's a good jumping off point for building relationships, as was discussed earlier, to reach out to the author. It can be someone who's on the business side or a lawyer in the industry, but try to find your way in, lower the barriers for you to feel comfortable to reach out by reading, finding out who the people are you connect with. Follow the panel on LinkedIn. If you're not already there, join LinkedIn, follow people, and then you'll just get exposed to the issues that are coming up in the industry. So on that note, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a great conversation. Really appreciate the panel being here with us, and we're all wishing you the best in your entertainment journeys.